Clara, Luna, and Toddy are Clara's two best friends. One night, they all relax together. They ride fast boats on the open sea. While they were talking, the whole city near the water lost power all of a sudden. Laura notices the aurora phenomenon not long after that. After a few seconds, the sea currents become very strong, which made Clara's position precarious. Clara discovered that the ship's GPS system had stopped working just as she was getting ready to relocate it. Clara was even more scared when her two companions who were outside the ship suddenly passed out. At the end of this scenario, Clara sees snowflakes while she is stuck inside the ship. Next, the narrative is about a man named Juan who drives an automobile. Juan and his buddies are going to Tano's house, which is also where their friend lives. Juan's journey was cut short since there were protests in Argentina at the time regarding power cuts. Time went on till Juan eventually got to Tano's neighborhood. Juan parked his automobile at a workshop managed by Vint before coming to Tano's house. Juan and his friends played cards at Tano's house after a little while. At this point, it's clear that they've been friends for a long time. Tano's neighborhood lost power all of a sudden while the game was still going on. It wasn't enough to get there. All technological devices, even cell phones, abruptly stopped working. It was summer, yet all of a sudden, it snowed. Juan and his buddies were confused by this mistake when they witnessed Vin fall outside the workshop. Juan's crew then thought that the snowfall in the area might have caused Visen's condition. Well, based on this assumption, Juan's crew thought that the snow might have poison in it. After this event, Juan's group thinks that those who touch snow would die right away. Juan's group was still inside Tano's house when they heard a woman screaming to get in because it was chilly. Tano went with Juan and the others to open the door for the woman while holding a gun. They subsequently learned that the woman was a courier named Inga who had sent liquor before the snow fell. Inga was able to live because she went to the Visen workshop when the snow started to fall. After then, Juan's group walked via a hallway in Tano's house that went straight to Visen's workshop. It looks like this hallway will help Inga uncover the hidden door to Tano's house. When Juan got to the workshop, he saw that there was a hole in the roof that let snow fall into the area below. Juan's automobile broke down all of a sudden, exactly like the others, so he and his pals had to go back to Tano's house for safety. Juan thought of his ex-wife Elena in the middle of all this. Juan was worried about Elena's health, so he decided to go to her place to help her. Tano and the others also fashioned costumes that would keep Juan's body safe from the snow so that Juan's scheme could get off the ground. Tano then gives Juan a gun in case a criminal tries to assault him. Juan gave a mask with an oxygen filter as a farewell gift. Juan was able to get out safely because of the mask and protective clothing. Juan found a lot of dead bodies along the road that had died from being outside in the snow. This snow makes the city dead because it has so many harmful effects. As time went on, the snow got worse and was followed by severe winds. Juan finds a train that has crashed because of snow while he is still on his route. Juan then located a group of survivors hiding in a car that wasn't covered in snow. Juan finally spotted them, but he stayed away from them. It showed the survivors for 6 hours. After that, they asked Juan to help them get out safely. Juan intended to shoot in this case so that the people who lived would be afraid and stop asking for help. But Juan held back and gave her 1 bottle of water to sip as a favor. Even though the survivors kept asking for help, Juan ignored them since he needed to immediately find out how Elena was doing. When Juan gets to Elena's apartment complex, he sees that a lot of the people who live there are still alive since they know how dangerous snow can be. Juan was apprehensive when he entered Elena's apartment unit because Clara was not there. Juan and Elena are Clara's parents. Juan was able to relax because Elena was still alive. Elena then tells Clara to go to Luna's house where she island. If we think back, Luna was also in the same motorboat as Clara. Elena's evidence shows that she didn't realize Clara was on the speedboat. Juan is now going to Clara's school to get Luna's home address. Juan also told Elena to stay in the apartment because she only had 1 mask to protect her. Juan was then stopped by the people who lived in the apartment as he was ready to leave. They were being pushed because the apartment's water supply was running low. Because of this, they require survival gear to securely go out and look for water. Then, Juan was asked to demonstrate his protective mask, which is one of the reasons he lived through the fatal effects of snow. Juan ultimately stood up to this request by discharging his gun because it sounded threatening. Juan ultimately decides to flee away with Elena because he thinks the people who live there are dangerous. While they are escaping, Juan and Elena lock themselves in an apartment that belongs to a dead woman. At the same time, the people living inside kept trying to smash down the door to get to Juan and take his mask. After that, Juan ordered Elena to get garments that would keep the snow off her whole body. Juan provided Elena a protective mask so she could travel to Keller's school first once she acquired a safe attire. Juan had to use a plastic bag to protect his head from the snow after Elena left. Juan then smashed the glass in the window so that the snow could come straight inside the apartment. After a while, the people who were able to break down the door ultimately got away and left Juan behind to avoid the snow. After that, Juan was able to leave the apartment complex and was set to meet up with Elena. But halfway through the trip, Juan was out of breath because a plastic bag was covering his head. After that, Juan passed out and experienced a bizarre scene. Tano was driving the automobile when Juan woke up a few minutes later. The car worked because it had an antique engine that wasn't impacted by electromagnetic radiation from the snow. Juan finds the car with Elena and his pals. 3 things that looked like meteors fell into the neighborhood as soon as Thanos' car left the apartment. Tan then parked the automobile at the vent workshop. It turned out that the workshop was going to be the only way inside Tano's house from now on to make it safer. Juan asked Tano if he can use the ancient automobile to look for Clara while he is recovering at Tano's house. But Tano said no because the car wasn't being used for personal reasons. Tano then made it clear that he only uses his automobile to go out to get food, water, and other essential needs. Juan and Elena had to walk to Clara's school, which was unavoidable. Juan and Elena take a little break in the car that broke down in the evening. In this case, they were hiding from the people who were hunting for a car that still worked. Juan and Elena didn't show up on purpose because the snow made people brave enough to do anything to reach their goal. The next day, Juan and Elena go to Clara High School. Then they work together on a task. Elena looks at the staff office to find out where Luna lives, and Juan looks for a car that can still drive. Later, Juan saw something unusual again in the middle of the quest. Juan was able to discover a working automobile once he was able to focus again. Elena, on the other hand, finds a toddler confined in a bathroom by mistake while she is taking a test. Elena was frightened of being attacked, therefore she didn't want to help the boy. Soon after, Juan came and told Elena she had to help the youngster. The child named Pablo was trapped in the bathroom as part of a joke. Pablo is now anxious about how his family is doing. Juan told Pablo about the devastating snowfall, so Pablo finally wanted to show Juan where Luna's house was so that Juan could take Pablo home to his family later. When Juan gets to Luna's house, it is vacant. When Juan looked closer, he noticed a lot of bodies of ethnic Chinese people at the site. Pablo is eventually heartbroken to learn that they are his relatives. Juan drove back after the event, thinking of a method to find Clara. Pablo, on the other hand, has a high temperature because he is so upset by the death of his family. After seeing Pablo's state, Juan and Elena finally want to help the poor boy since they feel sorry for him. Later, Juan and Elena went to an abandoned drugstore to seek fever medicine for Pablo. Not long ago, they fell for the lies of 2 bad guys who were pretending to be a couple. One of the criminals, who had a gun, was able to get Juan's car keys. The attacker finally confined Juan and Elena in the bathroom to stop them from attacking back. Juan and Elena urged Pablo to help them after the 2 leave. Juan was on his way with Elena and Pablo after leaving the pharmacy. In this case, Juan intends to shoot a family so he can take their working car. But Juan changed his mind when Elena was able to get his attention. Juan passed through the carriage gates again as time went on. These gates have been used by the survivors before. The survivors are not at the spot this time though. Juan is now wondering if the survivors were saved or something else could have caused them to go missing. Juan then went back to Tano's house with Elena and Pablo. Juan tells Tano that he still hasn't found Clara while they are talking. Tano, on the other hand, told them he was going to move to a safer place. Tano then told everyone what he had learned from the radio communication that he had fixed. Tano decided that the planet had been devastated by terrible snowfall after he heard the report. Because of this, Tano doesn't think Clara will get well. Juan is finally mad at Tano for thinking that Clara is dead. At night, a strange creature attacks Juan's partner in crime and kills him. Juan's group buried Russo and said their last goodbyes to him a little while later. Juan and Elena then get into a fight concerning Clara's search quest. After much thought, Elena decides to stay at Tano's house until Pablo gets better from his fever. Juan, on the other hand, goes to hunt for Clara by himself. Tano and Luca steal essential needs from the supermarket when Juan is gone. Tano used a walkie-talkie to get in touch with Inga in this case. Tano just found out from Inga that Juan was going to Clara's friend's residence, which was said to be where his daughter was. A few hours later, Tano came after Juan in his new old automobile. Tano said that while he was still on his way to Clara's friend's house, he helped Juan keep their 38-year-old friendship alive. Tano also came up with an idea regarding where the terrible blizzard came from. Tano says that this natural calamity happened because there were big concerns in the Arctic region. After that, Tano went through a place where there were a lot of broken automobiles. Juan got the keys to a pickup truck at the scene. It is thought that the truck still works. A group of troops on patrol showed up not long after that. Then the troops tell Dan Tano to go home for their own protection. But Juan and Tano said no because they thought the troops had important information. From there, Juan and Tano secretly follow the army to learn where they are going. The army shot Tano's car on the way because they were caught blinding. The army abruptly turned its attack on swarms of insect-like monsters while the situation was still tense. From now on, we shall call this bug monster Beetle. In the thick of the action of preying on troops, Beetle showed that he could take off the net and wrap the target's body. Because of the Beetle's attack, Juan and Tano are able to get away. On their way, they stumble upon a few blobs that look like a bunch of people wrapped up in beetles. Tano then committed a mistake that made a beetle angry. Juan shoots the beetle in the head and kills him, even though Tano is in a bad state and will soon be hunted. But sadly, the sound of Juan shooting made a group of beetles angry. Survivors toss Molotov grenades against the beetle herd to aid Juan and Tano when they are trapped. People who survived helped them get into the church. They had to be careful as they moved around because there were a lot of beetles in the building. From now on, we shall call the group of people who survived the church Fortune. Tano soon learns that Omar, who used to live in his house, is now a member of Fortune. Omar also doesn't like Tano, since Tano is more worried about his own safety than the safety of others. Fortune asks Juan and Tano to come view the falling meteors that keep showing up when it's safe. We've seen them before. Fortune then tells us that the beetle came from the asteroid. Omar eventually talked to Juan after a while. This shows that Juan used to be a soldier in Argentina. After that, Omar tries to get Juan to assist Fortune escape. The longer Fortuner stays there, the more likely it is that the beetle will find them. Juan, on the other hand, said no because he was still worried about Clara's search expedition. Juan proceeded alone to finish the assignment in the evening. Juan witnessed a meteor descend while he was still near the church building. Juan then sees the beetle marching in big groups. After that, Juan was finally asked to help Fortune leave. Then Juan said he could assist Fortune leave by utilizing a pickup truck he had found. Then, in the middle of getting ready, Juan learned that Ringo had decided to stay with the people closest to him. Juan said that the unusual things he had seen were connected to his time as a soldier while they were still talking. Juan currently thinks that this scene happens a lot because of the snow. No matter what it was, Ringo was glad that Juan was prepared to help Fortune. Juan and Tano helped Fortune leave the next day. Juan stood guard over the Fortune members who were hiding in the bus while they waited for Tano to open the tunnel that had been covered. As soon as the tunnel was open, Fortune rushed to that spot. In this case, a group of beetles showed up at the spot after being drawn there by a rolling tire. The beetle flock finally went to the church because Ringo's bells rang and made them angry. Ringo had been keeping an eye on how Fortune was getting out. Because of what Ringo did, Juan, Thano, and Fortune are able to get into the tunnel. When they got to the pickup place, a beetle showed up and pulled Thano. The beetle finally gets away and lets Tano go after being hit by a chemical weapon that a member of Fortune has. Juan, Thano, and Fortune are able to get away from the beetle crowd in a pickup truck. At the same time, Rango puts gas oil on every corner of the chapel so he may start a fire attack to get rid of the beetle herd. When the beetle herd started to attack, Ringo and the others nearest to her just sat there like they were about to die. After a few seconds, Juan saw that the chapel was on fire, which showed that Ringo had successfully launched his attack. Then the story reveals Juan's history as a soldier. At one point, Juan was in a violent struggle and was the only one left alive on his team. Juan lends Fortune his pickup truck so they can get to their location in the present. Not long after, Juan and Omar ran to catch up with Tano, who wanted to go home right away to check on his wife Ana. When Juan gets to the destination, he finds that everyone who survived is still alive in Tano's house. Juan was shocked that Clara came back alive and in good health, especially since she went to Tano's residence by herself. Clara lets him into Tano's residence after answering all of his inquiries since she knows Juan plays cards there a lot. Elena then said that Clara was still not totally well because she was still cold. As time went on, Tano started to think about his preparations to escape to an island that would become his second home. Tano now wants to take all of his pals, including Juan's family, to the island where he is going. The difficulty is that Tano doesn't have a car to take them all. In this case, Tano's friend Roberto arrived to offer a trade. If Tano gave up his house and workshop, Roberto would give him a car that could fit a lot of people. Tano also agreed to this trade to make his scheme work better. After that, Tano drove a big car that Roberto had given him. You can see here that the Tano family, the Juan family, and Lucas all rode in the automobile. Omar and Inga, who are part of Tano's group, drive different automobiles though. After that, the car halted at the dock area, which is where Tano's ship regularly docks. While he was there, Tano learned that a snowfall had made the water level drop. Because of this, people couldn't use the ship. Tanu's party stopped at a mall on their way to their destination, which ended up being a safe haven for them. This moment eventually clears out the hazardous snow that was starting to show up before Christmas Day. As Clara and Mickey, a member of the wealthy, ate together, she abruptly lost control. Juan then put Clara to sleep in his tent. Juan also thinks that Clara's illness was caused by being tired from the lengthy trip to Tano's house. Soon later, Tano shows Clara an official letter saying that she is utilizing Tano's ship. In the end, this proof let Clara utilize the spacecraft without Tano's authorization. The next day, everyone who had to leave the mall was shocked when the terrible snow stopped all of a sudden. So from now on, anyone can go outside without any safety gear. In the middle of all this, Tano noticed that his compass was off. So, for some reason, the snow stopped and the North and South Poles switched places. Tano didn't pay attention to this strange thing because he didn't have a scientific theory yet. Juan and Tano then went to hunt for Lucas, who had abruptly vanished. While they are looking for the missing person, a band of armed criminals attacks the mall. The soldiers then shot a lot of people till there were a lot of deaths. Then Juan and his friends tried to fight to save more people. Army personnel who were there to help with the evacuation ultimately put an end to this terror. Juan then sees Luke arriving with the soldiers. Tano soon finds out that the plotters have damaged Roberto's automobile tires. Because of this dilemma, Tano's group finally went with the soldiers to a refugee camp run by the Argentine military. When the mall is empty, one of the gang members goes into a tunnel nearby that is home to a herd of beetles. The beetle didn't assault the people in the conspiracy, which is strange because they were all working together. Juan finally woke up in a park after passing out for a while. After, Juan noticed Omar and Inga taking part in a shooting drill that the army was in charge of. We learn that Juan and his pals are now on an Argentine military base that is also a safe place to stay. The compound also has a tent hospital where Elena and Ana work as doctors. Clara then had time to see them when she was taking care of refugee patients. On the other hand, the top military leaders called Tano in. The higher-ups told Tano to fix the old-fashioned radio communication because they knew he was an electronics professional. Juan talked to Clara at the same time. At this point, Clara can see that Juan is still dealing with trauma that started when he left the military. Juan finally stopped talking to Clara because he needed to know right once how Tano was doing because he seemed upset. Well, it looks like Tano has been told to aid with the military's current assignment. For this mission, the military will use Tano's knowledge, old radios, and other ways to communicate. The goal is to get all the survivors to leave and head to the military base. Later, Tano learns Roberto moved to the compound. Roberto has already lost everything because of the beetles' onslaught. Tano now thinks that his plan to escape to the island will not work out because he learned of Roberto's sad demise. Tano changed his views and wanted to help the military mission because of this. Later, Juan, Tano, and the soldiers started to carry out the task. From now on, we'll just call their gang Ranger. Ranger employs an ancient train that still works to make the trip easier. The Ranger finally leaves for the existing communication facilities in the central city after doing some little repairs. The Ranger train crashes into a pile of wrecked cars that are blocking the rails along the way. The Ranger then had to walk to the communication center because the train tracks were broken. When they get to their target, they question why the communication center was empty when there was no sign of the beetle attack. No matter what happens, the Rangers keep going until they can ultimately send a message to the survivors. After a few hours, Ranger observed a peculiar light coming from a stadium not far from the base. They chose to ignore the unpleasant scenario because they still had things to do immediately. Juan and his buddies played cards to pass the time in the evening. Lucas, on the other hand, suddenly got quite serious and angry at Tano's game tricks. Lucas stabs Omar in the waist to let out his anger before he finally gets away. Later, Juan and Tano see Lucas standing on the roof of the building. Lucas kept talking until Juan and Tanu were perplexed at this point. Luke then indicates that the humans will be attacked in a big way. People think Luke killed himself when he jumped over the roof. A little while later, a group that looked suspicious started walking toward the building. Juan and Tano finally ran away since there were dozens of armed men in the group. During the fight to get away, Juan and Tano were able to bring Omar, who was bleeding. Juan and two of his companions were able to get away in a ranger train as the enemy got closer. There were also two additional rangers that made it through. Juan thought that the way armed groups attacked was the same as how the people who planned the mall attack did it at the start of the trip. This makes people think they are working together. Ranger recently figured out that the quietness in the building is a trap set by the criminal. After that, the Ranger talked about what they would do next. Tano stays on the train to take Omar to the military hospital complex. Juan and a Ranger look into the weird lights in the stadium. Juan noticed a lot of people traveling in an organized way on his way, and for some reason, the beetle didn't attack them. Juan thinks that there is a group of people who work with the beetle after hearing about this event. Juan saw the bizarre scene that had been in his mind a lot before, again after that. It looks like something was going on in that scenario that was happening right now. Juan and the men find another surprise when they experience déjà vu. The beetle is working with a bunch of people, but it turns out that a creature that looks like the beetle's boss is in charge of them. In fact, there are now hundreds of people in charge. It's likely that they were the ones who the beetle got tied up with. Juan thinks Clara can get to Tano's residence securely, even though things are dangerous because the beetle leader is in charge of her.